everyone. Welcome to our third AFS of the semester. Very exciting, right? I can't believe it's only our third. I feel like we have gone through a lot of the semester, but I guess it's also good because don't want it to end quite so quickly. But I wanted to welcome you all again and just fill the room with excitement, fill the Zoom room with excitement, because I think this is going to be a really good one. Everyone is, but we have some exciting conversations coming our way. Thank you all for being here. And to start off, I want to get a feel of who's in our Zoom room, who's joining us. I know I see some familiar faces, but according to some lovely feedback we got, I also want to play a fun poll game to get to know those folks that I don't know. So let's get that rolling. Waiting on one. I always feel like a professor when I do this. They're like, guys, we only need one more person. All right, guess we're not getting that one. It's okay. Keep your secrets. Stay anonymous. All right. But if you do want to see who's in the room tonight, here we are. We got a good distribution. This is wonderful. Well, again, thank you all for coming. And also, please feel free to turn on your video for this beginning portion, just so we can see everyone before we dive into the conversation with Sam. I forget that you guys don't see the results like I do in real time, so I'm just chuckling to myself, but I will share them with you. All right, that one person is really holding out on us. Okay.
It could be you.
Oh my God, you're right. Katie, oh my God, you cracked the code. I'm so embarrassed. What an affront to my hosting duties. Wow. All right. Thank you, Katie. Guess that was me. Anyway. Okay, so these are the results. All right, we got a good distribution here as well. And let's move on to some funner topics. Hopefully I can answer this time. I don't even think I can answer. Okay, guess I'll just keep my own secrets. Haha. Nobody likes George. Dang. All right. It's not his day. Maybe if I could vote, I would vote for you. Okay. And then last one before we dive in. Oh my gosh, this is really surprising me. You guys are throwing me for a loop. Really? Only one breakfast vote? I am astounded. Yes, Graham. Okay, me too. I like breakfast. I like Ron Swanson. Oh, Anna's saying no. Okay, I got a decisive breakfast hater in the house. Don't know how I feel about that. All right. Well, that was fun. Thank you all for indulging me, even though I could not vote. Thank you, Katie, for pointing that out. Got my back. Alas. Okay. So now that we've got to know each other a little bit, a few reminders before we begin our conversation. So if you could mute your video and audio as soon as we start our conversation with Sam, that would be great, just so we can focus on him and our guest. And then also at the end of the program, I'm going to be sharing a small feedback form. So if you're a member, please fill out that form to get your points for being here, as well as giving us any feedback or ideas for future sessions or programming. I'm always open to that. As I said, the polls came out of some great feedback we got, and you all know how fun that was. So please offer me some feedback. I really do care, and I really do appreciate it. And without further ado, time to introduce our guest for tonight. All right, so Sam Eure graduated from William & Mary with degrees in political science and government in 2007. He returned to William & Mary in 2015 to earn his MBA with a focus in entrepreneurship. After graduating from the Mason School of Business in May 2017, Sam founded Iota Creative Collective in September 2017. So very fast turnaround there. Iota Creative Collective is located right here in Williamsburg and provides local musicians with opportunities, access to research and acumen, and a supportive community through songwriter showcases, an annual arts festival, and many other initiatives. So thank you so much, Sam, for joining us. I know this is going to be a cool one. Yeah, thank you so much.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, guys. Glad to be here. Always glad to take part in anything tribe related. I affectionately make the joke that, after my first go around, I decided to give them the rest of my money and come back for my MBA. But it's more about the people that I met. And I met people who just supported my ideas. And so it was really easy for that quick turnaround. My independent study that I did with my MBA actually became my business model that then became IOTA in a 2-month turnaround. So it was pretty cool. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys and sharing what I have to share. Hopefully it's insightful. Maybe it'll be awkward. Who knows? It'll be fun to discover which one it'll be.
Oh, it's always awkward on Zoom. So that's awkwardness is implied, especially with me as the host. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sam. And I like to start off all these conversations by just asking, especially now, just how are you? What does it mean to show up for yourself right now as a professional, but also just as a person?
So it's been interesting. There's been a lot of growth that I've had to kind of force upon myself through this, both as a person, but as an entrepreneur, as somebody who prides himself on being able to thrive in chaos and make the pivots that are necessary, which is what your life is about as an entrepreneur, is being able to pivot when you need to pivot, and kind of knowing yourself, which really a lot of it comes down to EQ. Like it comes down to your emotional intelligence and whether or not you know yourself well enough to really adapt, because it's not just adapting a strategy, but it's adapting the way that you do things and the way that you interact with the entire world around you at this point. And then allowing yourself to feel all the things. So we had to cancel my music festival, and even though we were going to do it virtual, I got hit with a liability insurance bill or potential bill. The estimate was, it was absurd. It was about $10,000, which included it, like insuring in case it was a super spreader event, which is something that I didn't consider, when I was like, oh, we'll just go virtual, so like those things kind of wallop you on the side of the head. And it takes a lot, and then you start questioning yourself, and then you have to kind of like get over those feelings. You have to accept that you're feeling this way, and that this sucks and it's hard, and I lost a bunch of my investment and all these things, and how do you grow from that? You have to accept it. Then you have to say, okay, well, what's my path forward? And it doesn't matter what the path forward is, really. You just need to take a step from that position in any direction, because any kind of movement from where you were is better than where you are. And so it's been pretty difficult, but it's been pretty cool, because I've had time to read, and I've had time to talk with people and like reevaluate and pivot. And now I'm in a much more confident place as an entrepreneur, and I have more of a direction and where I'm going to go. And then when that got hit with another obstacle, I was much more easily able to make an adjustment and quickly pivot, which means that I've grown in terms of a headspace of where I'm at and where I need to go. And am I still driven? Do I still have that same purpose? It kind of helps filter out all the other stuff, and it breaks apart the mask that you wear as an entrepreneur often, which is like, I know exactly what, like, I'm unflappable, I'm unbreakable, and I'm going to get this done, with all the gumption that you can muster. And then it's, you have a realization of like, well, if this isn't my purpose, chances are good I wouldn't still be chasing this, because it really, it's catastrophic to a lot of small businesses out there. So, it's been a lot of acceptance, I feel.
Yeah, I love that. I love so much of what you said. I'm a big EQ person, big believer in that. And I love the mask analogy as well. I'm wondering if you think about that mask that an entrepreneur wears simply to get their venture started and to put their dreams in action, what is that mask made up of? What is it built out of over time? What experiences contribute to that mask being built? And what can break it down? And when you do break it down, what is underneath that? What is the potential of what's underneath that mask?
Well, I really like masks in general, and like the concept, because like my mask, and I can't speak for everybody else's, but mine was a combination of me trying to present myself in a way that the world would accept,
Mm.
um, and pay a little bit more attention to me, I mean, and I even cut myself today before I got on here. I'm wearing just an old vintage t-shirt. I've had it for many, many years. And I was like, I should go put on a blazer. And I was like, well, no, let me just show up how I'm going to show up, and being authentically me. So it's really, getting rid of some of the preconceived notions of what you think the world wants you to be. And you like add that little things into your paper mache mask. And then it becomes this thing.
Mm.
And then you get hit with a crisis that shakes everything. Like it shakes you to your core. And so when I tell people that COVID really did break me, that's what it broke. It broke the mask apart, and I'm no longer like a slave to it. Like I no longer, I'll be unabashedly and unashamed of who I am, where I'm at. Okay, so this is where my business is,
Mm.
but it allows you to get that perspective when you let go of that mask and all those preconceived notions of, well, they won't think I'm a serious entrepreneur because I don't have something that's successful in the pot yet. Like I'm still building. And you get the people who don't really understand what it is to build a business from the ground up, particularly with a model that doesn't exist. It's kind of like you were dropped out of the plane with an axe in the middle of the woods, and they said, hey, build your business, but also you have to build a road so other people know what you're doing.
Mm.
You're doing all those things at the same time. It's just a weird kind of thing. So I love the fact that I'm now kind of unburdened with caring what people think.
I love that for you too. I hope that I totally get to that point someday, but I know a lot of what you're saying is very relatable for me. And I think for most people here, that would have been an interesting poll question. LOL, no. Polls aren't that scary. But yeah, no, I love that so much. Can you talk to us a little bit about your time at William and Mary and how that was a step along your journey, from that point of caring what people think, having that mask up to now smashing that mask and just kind of living your life and being you?
So it's actually very strange. I had layers of masks. I was like an onion's worth of masks. From high school, like the mask that I put on in high school of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be. Like I didn't want to be a musician. I wanted to be a jock. I was going to play soccer at William and Mary. That was the only thing I was going to do.
Mm.
I was going to be a doctor. I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. Like all these things that I wanted to be. That then I get to William and Mary and I start going through the classes and doing the work. And I hit my first aha moment of, hey, you actually have to try. This isn't high school. Two, as smart as you thought you were, there's always 17 other people in the room who are either just as or more smart than you are, like more into, but it was a different, it's not a quantitative kind of thing. It's a qualitative, like they're very intelligent in this particular avenue and I'm very intelligent in these kind of things. And so it was a learning process of like removing the mask that I had built and then trying to make sure that I showed up authentically as myself, who I thought I was then, which was still a mask going through that. And that kind of leads to like, I struggled through undergrad and I didn't understand why. And I took it pretty personally. It was, things weren't functioning the way I thought they should. And I started to question myself. I started to doubt whether or not I actually belonged at William and Mary. Like maybe I should have not chosen such an academically rigorous school, all these things. And you kind of bottle that up and you carry it with you for a while. So I graduated and I graduated on time, but I didn't graduate the way I thought that I should have.
Mm.
And that kind of stuck with me. And turns out I ended up several years later being told that I had been undiagnosed with multiple sclerosis for decades. And so the cognitive issues that I was having in undergrad were related to that, and nobody thought to look for it. And so it was like that health crisis that kind of was like, oh, well, there's a rationale for why, but it also taught me how to be flexible. So they talk about with MS and any neurological kind of thing, neuroplasticity,
Mm.
which is the adaptability of your brain to be able to like circumnavigate whatever damaged parts there are, or like teaching yourself how to do something in a different way than you normally used to know how to do it.
Mm.
which I learned naturally to get over some of the barriers that I faced. And then finally, I came back to William and Mary with a vigor. And I was like, you know what? I want to prove that I can be here chasing what I want to do because I taught myself how to learn, how I learn, and I can, and I did it for myself. And I came through, and the MBA program was rigorous, and I excelled because I trusted myself and what I had learned about myself. And then it gave me the confidence to really believe in my ideas and everything that I had to offer. Um, and that was with professors that I met, and to this day, I still email and correspond with Ron Monarch. And earlier in several months ago, Graham and I talked about an app idea that I was developing at the time, still am currently developing, although it's evolved. And everybody here's at William and Mary in both bachelor's and master's were super supportive
Mm.
and allowed me to show up in my own time. They allowed me to self-discover all these things, but helped me along the way if I was getting kind of too far off the beaten path. They kind of redirected me, and that kind of helped. And so I would not be who I am as an entrepreneur, and I think as a person in total, without the contributions of both my experience in my bachelor's degree and master's degree.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, that was a lot and a lot of wonderful stuff. I am really struck by it seems like you had these stages of, like you were saying, an onion, but of unraveling and, becoming more yourself, discovering what that is,
Yeah.
how to use it, and do things your way. And I want to touch on something that you mentioned in the beginning of your talk as well. So you say you're doing these things, you've discovered the way that you learn, that you navigate the world. How do you communicate that to others, whether it be in a professional context of, applying for grants, as we talked about before our conversation began on AFS, but, you're applying for grants right now, or, even in your personal life when you're developing, those friendships and relationships with professors and support networks, how do you communicate that individuality to others, maintaining it and preserving it and protecting it, but also reaching out to get that supportive community you're going to need to continue to develop it?
Well, I think that authenticity begets authenticity, right? So if you show up as yourself and you're not trying to pretend who you are, you're not putting on airs about what, you're not bragging on like, oh, well, I'm this entrepreneur, I've got this great idea, it's going to change the whole world and I'll be rich and successful and I'll have like, multiple houses and all the cars that I want, all those things that are very stereotypical, like, people think when they think of like entrepreneurs, they instantly go to like Elon Musk or like, Steve
Yeah.
Jobs, or like, they go to the big ones that they can, that are like culturally relevant in the US,
Yeah.
as opposed to like I've met the guy that created like the neck garter, like like
Wow.
it, that's cool. Like I use that when I go snowboarding, but like wow, like that's really cool. Like who would have thought that instead of a scarf, you just have something that's easy to pull up and pull down, like, and he's very unassuming, and we connected because we just connected. And all the other connections that like people gravitate towards you when you are not only authentically yourself, but you are in pursuit of your purpose. And
Mm.
so if you connect with, so this comes to the EQ thing again, like knowing yourself. If you know who you are and you know what your purpose is, right? And that doesn't have to be what you do for a living, but if you have your purpose, it tends to, you kind of create your own gravitational field,
Mm.
and certain people who shouldn't be in your orbit are pushed away, and the people that need to be there to support you, they naturally connect with you on this very like, it's a frequency, that's the only way I can describe it, and you just connect. And so it's just, you just have to show up as you and talk honestly about who you are, and honestly just don't be a, I don't know that I can say this, don't be an asshole, like that, like, like be a decent human being, and people will show up for you, and they will offer forth what they can, even if it's just a kind word, or maybe it's a connection.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you don't have to hide what you think or what you believe, but when it comes to your purpose you know, that as long as it benefits people, the impact that your purpose is going to have on the world, that's your responsibility as an entrepreneur, really, is to
Mm.
find what your impact to the world can be and to chase that doggedly, to just go, because you only got one shot. And you don't want to get to the end and say, you know what, well, there's that dream that I had, you know, but I didn't think I could do it, or I was afraid to do it, or my mom and dad said I couldn't do it, or should I said I shouldn't do it because I need to take the safe route. Sure, the safe route is there, but nobody ever had regrets about the safe route. They were just kind of like, oh, I had regrets about not taking the, you know, the dangerous route. Like I had regrets about, like, I should have chased that because I'll never know if I could have gotten there. I believed what everybody else told me. You need to self-discover.
So I'm wondering, with purpose, how do you see your identities as a social entrepreneur and as a musician? Do you see them building to a joint purpose, or do you see them kind of branching off into separate purposes?
Well, it's all the same for me, and I think I'm very fortunate for that. The community that IOTA Creative Collective serves,
Mm.
I am a member of that community. So as we were talking before everybody else joined us, you know, I have the unique position of being able to say, hey, guys, like just talking to my friends, my peers that are all playing music with me or trying to get back into playing music, that have been doing this for years in different styles in different cities. We all talk about, all right, well, what's going on now? Like, we just got hit with this, and then we just got hit with this. So where do we go from here? We're all experiencing this. And then they say, well, Sam, you're the idea guy. Like, what do you think? What do you think we should do? And I'm like, well, I'm not the idea guy. I'm struggling just like you are. But, you know, I think that this might be the way this is going to go. And, you know, case in point, Facebook just changed their rules on music online,
Mm.
for live streams and for video content, which
Yeah.
is kind of impacting. It's still ambiguous as to their intention, but my friends in Nashville and in Austin, Texas, we have all kind of come to this idea that we understand, and it's because of COVID-19.
Mm.
So when COVID-19 shut down the gig economy, um, shows all went virtual, right? And then musicians started putting virtual tip buckets up. Like, this is my PayPal, this is my Venmo, this is this. So it was fine for a while. And now Facebook is removing all of that because domestically, Facebook is just as viable but easier to navigate than, let's say, starting a YouTube channel for some.
Mm.
Um, but the lobbyists for the PROs probably saw that as lost revenue opportunity for royalty rights.
Mm.
So they lobbied Facebook to remove all content that could be in violation of copyright. Now, as a songwriter, I have been flagged for copyright violations of my own material on Facebook. I own it, yet their algorithm is crawling over it saying this doesn't belong to you because it's still in processing with the Copyright Royalty Board.
Mm.
So I think that they're trying to figure out a way that they can monetize, like get their percentages out of all the tips that people are donating through that. And I think it's probably going to come from a widget, which is something that IOTA is actually working to develop with the app that we're now doing. So like, that's kind of what we see, but being a part of that and being in it is crucial to being able to connect, because in many industries, it's kind of like the good old boys club where, you know, like,
Mm.
if somebody who's not a musician tries to tell a musician what to do, say you're at a gig and it's like, oh, you should play this song. And a musician will just look at you and be like, uh-huh, yeah, okay. And usually it's like Freebird or, you know, some other song that's like, you know, culturally hilarious in their minds. But to us as a musician, it's like, all right, well, you don't play. Or even if they do play, if they don't play in the same way that you do, they're like, oh, I play at home. It's like, okay, cool. Or they're like, hey, I can sing, let me sing. And it's like, well, this is my job. I wouldn't show up to your job and say, hey, let me do those taxes. Like, you know, but they don't have that perspective. Um, so people kind of that are outsiders from the industry trying to dictate to people in the industry what the industry needs to do to survive, like people just tune it out. And in order to solve the problem for the entire like group of us, like the entire community, we need to find a way to bridge the gap. So we need to pull the outside perspectives in and not exclude them. We
Mm.
need to include those ideas into the feedback loop that we created for ourselves, but then also talk to each other like, well, we think this will work, we think that will work. You know, it's all about feedback. And without the feedback from inside and outside, you're really not going to get anywhere. So I think being a part of the community, circling back around, sorry, being a part of the community allows me to connect some of those dots that would otherwise go unconnected.
That sounds a lot like customer discovery, or that kind of mentality of going out, and really getting to know the people who, are part of your IOTA creative community,
Yeah.
and seeing what they would like. And that kind of brings me to another thing that I really wanted to touch on. When I was doing my little background research, it was super fun. And I came across, a lot of stuff about how IOTA and you kind of feel responsible for the community and, giving back to the community. And I wanted to know kind of how that ties in with your personal purpose, and how you translated that into a business. I think I just really want to say this because this quote was incredible. Like, you were saying, IOTA Creative Collective is a venture that prioritizes community and environmental impact concerns over profit margins. And I really like to hear more about that from you.
So the whole idea for this is that it's of the community, by the community, and for the community, right? And I don't think that that's rare amongst social entrepreneurs. Like, it's all about the impact that you have and that the impact your community can have on everything. It's all about those ripples. And for me, all of it kind of came down to, I had these conversations, just very raw conversations with people.
Mm.
And I remember one of them that was standing out to me was a 19-year-old aspiring songwriter. And she didn't have people who believed in her. And she wanted to figure out if she should just quit and do what she wanted to do. And I said, no, why would you quit? Do you love it? And she said, yes. And I was like, well, then don't quit. Like, this is yours, whether you do it full time, whether you do it only on the weekends as a weekend warrior, or whether you do that. Like, I just met all these people who had these ideas that of what success was.
Mm.
And none of that had to do with their own vision of success in music. And a lot of them didn't have that were playing out. We're trying to figure out, well, I'm obviously not making money at this. So why am I not making money? It's probably because I'm not good enough. They started to internalize things that they shouldn't have internalized. And it was because they didn't have the business side of the music industry. So, like, if you don't treat yourself as a musician, yes, you are a musician, but it's not about talent. If you don't treat yourself as a business, you are a micro entity. If you do not have the business acumen behind you, you're not going to find success. And a lot of the industry, the big machine, plays off of that. So that's how you hear, like, Taylor Swift, it's all of her catalog from, like, however many years is owned by that one guy, because she didn't understand. She got excited, as many will, with the check. They made it, but they don't know the details because they don't have the business acumen to understand what their lawyer is encouraging them to sign, because the lawyer gets a huge chunk of that. So, like, and you have to kind of see those aspects of it. And on a smaller scale, like, if you constantly are playing these gigs for the cheapest price, you're never going to make the money that you need, because you don't believe that you're worth that price. Like, you have to really believe that you're worth that to get it. So there's conversations like that it was daunting to me how little understanding of how to determine what their, like, each individual's success, like, they just didn't know. They were like, well, I'm just floating. And it's like, well, all right, what do you want to be? Like, what do you want out of this? Well, I just want to play. Okay. And then you drill down and they're like, well, I don't just want to play. I want to play, and I want to make money as a side hustle. It's like, okay, so what are you doing towards those ends? And so you start, like, breaking it down with them, and then they're like, wow, this is what I do for work. I didn't realize that I should be doing that with music as well. And so you kind of get to that where it's just like, again, my role and the impact that I can have with all the things that we're doing, all the programs that we're doing, is a way to initiate dialogue and conversations that people can self-discover what they need to be successful. It's not my job to tell them,
Yeah.
like, if it was something as simple as, like, a product, like, hey, this will solve all your problems. It's not. because it's individualized for each of them, and every single person has a different idea of what that means. And
Mm.
so I can't tell you what success would be for you in music. Success might be, hey, I got up at an open mic and I played one song and I enjoyed it.
Exactly.
That's success, and then some people have a very financial motive. Some
Mm.
people just want to go and be a session musician and play with all the greats, and that's great. So like identify that by knowing yourself and knowing what you want, and treat yourself like a business. And like that really developed, you know helping them find their purpose. And by doing that, I asked them one thing after I've had the conversation, and I said, okay, well, if you found this to be helpful, I encourage you, pass it for, like, pay it forward.
Mm.
Like, find somebody else that you may meet and just have a real conversation about what they want and share your experiences. That will then, they can glean something off of your experiences, and then you can connect them to, so it becomes this huge network just like any other. And you all group think and make your way to the top together. So
Yeah. So would you say that your definition of success then would be that community and environmental impact?
yes, and even more so. So for me, I was ready to retire from music right around the time I came back to get my MBA. The health crisis had left me in a wheelchair when I left Nashville, and I was told I wouldn't play music again, I wouldn't walk again, and I came back to Virginia pretty defeated.
Mm.
Um, Made some changes, but then musicians who knew that I'd come back from Nashville, they showed up and they said, hey, you should come out and just sit in with me. You
Mm.
just bring your guitar, or hey, I'm just going to play this. You remember this song? You want to sing it for me? And they took me from this very dejected place into a place where I loved music again.
Mm.
And it was their encouragement, the community rallying around me, that really helped me to get back to where I am. And so giving back to the community that brought me back to music, that helped me reclaim my purpose and the thing that I know that I was kind of put here to do. Um, that's my success, is that I can be situated with these people that brought me back from the brink, and hopefully help them if they're ever in a position where I need to be the one person that's like, no, hold on, like we can do this, like we can overcome, we can get through this together as a community. That's kind of the purpose. So
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that, being so vulnerable and open and authentic, as you said, with us. It's really wonderful, especially over Zoom, where sometimes authenticity can be hard.
yeah,
Um, so thank you for that. And I think now we'll go to questions. I know I have a few, but I'm really curious to see where the conversation will head. So everybody can go ahead and share their screens and, just chat with Sam. Conversation is open.
cool.
I have a question.
Okay.
So you talked a lot about like self-awareness and self-discovery. Do you have any more like general tips, just like in your experience about turning self-discovery into self-direction?
So for me, it was kind of difficult because getting to know yourself, you start to even almost overanalyze. You're like, it's like, oh, well, I think I understand myself now. And I realized for me that sometimes what I put out gets reflected back in a almost skewed way. Because you have to not only believe in it, um, but you have to like accept all aspects of it. So it's like, you can't just say, all right, well, this is what I know about myself, and and that's it. You have to always be on an evolutionary like step ladder, like one more step, one more step, one more step. I'm always reading. And it's the one thing I recommend to everybody. I'm after books, all books, and I'll read anything. So, and I'm trying to understand other people, and in understanding other people and the reasons why and why not they do things, I've come to know more about myself. One of the books that I gave on the book list is actually a book called "Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me," and it's helping to understand belief systems and like why people believe what they believe. There's another book that's very similar called "The Righteous Mind," but when you understand these belief systems and why other people are the way they are, you can better see yourself in the mirror when you're looking for self-discovery and then self-direction. And also understanding those belief systems really helps with disruption, right? So if you want to disrupt a long-held idea, you have to break through and understand why the idea is there to begin with, or why it could be there, or people hold on to it. And then that understanding leads to conversations and dialogue, which then leads to innovation that's organic, as opposed to like forced, like, hey, this is a forced disruption. You know, people will resist. We're naturally resistant. And so when you realize that about yourself as well, that resistance shows up, that kind of prevents you from a direction. But when I talked about frequencies earlier, and so I think that when you have done the self-discovery and you're looking for like your next step in navigation, you end up, there's a frequency, and it just kind of, you feel it. And I know that's not the best answer, but it definitely is something that I've experienced, and I think a lot of other people have. It's just like, when you know, you know. And that's, sometimes you get 5 steps into that path and it's like, oh, nope, red flag. Like, I'm getting this weird queasy feeling. Like, I got to go back to where I was. And that's part of it, is like, you know, take a couple steps in a direction and you see. So it's very scientific methody, you know, like, you know, test your hypothesis and then don't be afraid to backtrack, because I think a lot of people feel that backtracking means that you somehow failed or didn't do it right. And that's not it. That's just part of the process. It's going forward. Oh, that didn't work. Step back, go the next direction. And also trust the people around you. When all of a sudden you've got all these people and things seem to be clicking, and like your friend circle is all like in support of everything, like, you'll know, because it's a frequency. I don't know. It's an aura around you when you get it. You know, if that answers your question. I'm sorry, that was kind of wordy, but.
No, that was helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions? Concerns?
I've got one. Sam.
Okay.
So at the beginning of the conversation, I was really picking up on the trait of adaptation, or the skill to be able to adapt. And then later on, you shared part of your story that also I thought was a great illustration of grit. I think those two can go together sometimes. I'm just curious though, like, I was imagining the image that you described of like being dropped down into a forest, and you've got the axe, and it's like, all right, build.
Right.
It's often easier to do that when you have some practice.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for us about, like, how can we practice things like adaptability and grit? What can we do so that, like, we're not plopped down onto the forest floor and it's the first time we're having to do these things?
Right.
Any tips?
So I think that the best practice for that is something that, I did in my MBA, and I'm sure they're doing in all the coursework that everyone's doing at William & Mary in business right now. But all those case studies, that you do, where it's like, hey, this is the situation and these are the details. Like, do you think this was a good idea or not? So it's kind of like putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and having some of those even just having conversations with people about, well, this was my situation, and just really making an opinion, like kind of breaking it down for yourself. Like, well, what would I have done in that situation? Would I have, or if I have this idea, but I don't know how I'm going to bring it to market, or I don't know if it's viable, how do I do that? And it's like with the business model canvas, you really go through and it's like, all right, well, these are all my sections that I need to kind of like check off these boxes. These are my stakeholders, and this is our resources, and this is where we're going to, where we're going to get our revenue from. It's the same thing. So it's the agility that you learn in like lean startup kind of stuff, and putting it on paper, and then doing little micro tests, also getting feedback. Like, I use SurveyMonkey to exhaustion. I mean, I'm constantly sending out surveys to the musician friends that I have about the ideas, and I think that helps you approach adaptability, but you also need to be willing to let go of the things that we're holding on to. And that's what's really hard, because, a lot of the things that we may encounter, if we're going to put our time and our effort and our money into it, our blood, sweat, and our tears, when things go askew and you need to make that pivot, or sometimes you need to put that to bed and move in a different direction completely, being willing to let go of it and accept that happened. Okay, yeah, that might have sucked, but like, we're going to keep moving forward. That is the first step to the adaptability, is learning how to let go and being willing to. And I think it's easier to do that once I keep circling back to it, but once you know yourself and you've done some of the work that's necessary for you to be able to empathize with others and sympathize with others and all the things that are in EQ, and you can apply some of those things to yourself, but then knowing why you believe that was the thing that you needed to hold on to, like really analyzing yourself, helps you with that adaptability, because the adaptation may be nothing that you can do, but that you need to allow a team member to kind of take the reins, and so that, and then it becomes less about you and more about like turning to your team and being willing to let go of the reins and let somebody else kind of step in so that your idea comes to life, as opposed to letting it die on the vine. So all of those things, I believe, are some of the keys to that adaptability in business and in your personal life. You can't always do it by yourself, but often we don't let other people help us, or we're not going to ask for help or things like that. There are resources out there. So you got to know yourself, know your environment, and know what's around. And like many leaders out there, if you don't know the answer, have somebody on your team or know where you can find the answer.
I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the nugget that I think is wisdom around willingness. I don't know that you can really apply any of the entrepreneurial thinking principles without a humility and willingness, especially adaptation. And in your story, I just see an extra measure of humility. So I can see why you're good at those things. So I appreciate that answer.
I'm trying, still learning, it's a journey.
I just had a question. Anybody else can go, but I'm like exploding with questions. I really want to know, so like, what are your tips for good delegation? And what do you think can help somebody who is trying to delegate better, such as myself?
So delegation is one of the things that I struggle with a lot. And it's a point of pride, that I need to work on, very much egocentric, that I'm very, and this is the evaluation I had to do with myself, which I'm gonna bore you guys with right now. But like recently, one of the things that got kind of shot down was I have a Project Argos, which is a vintage Airstream that I've gutted, and I'm turning it into a tiny desk concert space / recording studio on wheels. That we would be able to do all these things. Now, it is a 26-foot trailer. I stripped it down to bare metal by myself. I rewired it by myself. I did all this stuff. And whatever skill I didn't have, including welding, I learned so that I could do it by myself. And I told myself at the time when I was going through this that it was because it was cost effective that I was doing all of this stuff myself. But in terms of the time that it has actually taken for me to get to where it was 2 months ago, it was not time effective. Like it wasn't worth the time, because I could have paid somebody, and yes, there would have been more expense there, but it would have been done without the drag out timeline. And I got, karma kind of smacked me around a little bit, because a couple months ago when we got that last hurricane that rolled through, it damaged all the work that I've done over 5 years, and I have to rip it all out and start over. So, I see it like that hit hard right after, like, I was like, oh my gosh, just another thing. But, now I know, all right, let's just budget better. I will budget for outsourcing the work and delegating some of that out and bringing people in to help me, because when it comes down to it, if you want your business to succeed, there are a couple things that you need to do. You need to be willing, like it's a mantra that I use for everything, which is, if I want my business to succeed, I must be willing to, and. And if I do not want my business to fail, I must be willing to ... And you can turn that around. So my business will fail if I don't ... You know, and so you kind of list those things out in when I'm thinking my way through a situation. And that also goes to the adaptability, is like, all right, well, how do I pivot around this? How do I do this? All right, well, what am I willing to give? Am I willing to spend more money so my business doesn't fail? Yes. Okay, check. Okay, so if I'm willing to spend more money, then that means that I need, I'm willing to bring in a new team member, or I'm willing to do this. You kind of evaluate it that way, and that kind of helps you in your decision making in a qualitative kind of way compared to a quantitative kind of way. Because if you're not willing to make some of those sacrifices, which even to your own ego may be like not how you would like to do it if you had all the money in the world and all the skills in the world. I'm sorry, welding aluminum is the worst decision I have ever made in my whole life. It is not something that you can learn from YouTube. It is the worst decision I've ever made. And, you know, that lesson learned. All right, I have a welding friend that I made now, and he's like, oh, I'd love to help you. And I was like, really? Where were you like 2 years ago when I was doing this myself in my backyard, trying not to burn my house down, you know, like, and so lessons learned. But, you know, so I think that's kind of how I'd approach that.
I have a question.
Okay.
So as an undergrad, I'm kind of starting to explore like what I might want to do post-graduation. And I'm just kind of curious what you think or how your William & Mary education may have helped you when you became an entrepreneur, or how it might have led you in that direction.
So it helped me in a lot of ways. And I think that it was one of the liberal arts style education that gives you access to like all the general education requirement courses, gives you some perspectives beyond just specialization. And that's kind of, I mean, you are going to specialize, you have your major, but like hopefully you have chased some other classes that, regardless of whether it really was connected to what your major might be, you were interested in. And the pursuit of your interests is going to give you the perspective to really kind of chart your course afterwards. You know, I'm a big fan of doing as many things as you can, and touching as many things as you can, not to become like, you know, they say, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. But I think that jack of all trades have a great perspective and a great way of manipulating the world based on all these different varieties. Like, you know, a chef will have a different outlook on designing a house than an architect will. An architect is very like, well, give me my AutoCAD and like, all right, let me know these dimensions. I'm going to make it look like a Romanesque bulb. And a chef is like, well, I want it to look like a cake. You know, neither of them can be wrong, but you know, it gives you some perspective. So it allows you to engage some of these people that have these different ideas that help you out. And I think that for you to find where you want to go, you know, after graduation, you've got time. And like, you know, it's not something that, you know, you need to know immediately. I mean, everybody says, oh, after college, you got to get a job and you got to get right to it. And, you know, sure, like, you know, that's great. But it's also okay to kind of like mosey around and like, you know, have a part-time job or wait tables or bartend or, you know, go nanny in Europe or whatever you want to do for a while, just to figure yourself out, read, experience, talk to people, see things. And you might find that what you always thought that you were going to do is the best thing that you didn't do, because you end up finding what you're supposed to do.
I'm hoping my team wrote that down. We've got a Slack channel for content. So somebody's got to capture that quote. That was great, Sam.
Anyone else? Cool.
All right. Well, yeah, unless anybody else has any other comments or questions, just want to thank everybody so much for coming out. Thank you again, Sam. This was like such a refreshing conversation, especially in the midst of midterms and all that. Your grit is extremely inspirational. Have some fun essays to do tonight. Nothing like the grit you talked about, but a lesser grit. that I can apply tonight. And so thank you for giving me that inspiration. I just want to drop the feedback links, just as I promised, in the chat for you all. So please check in. The first one is our feedback link, and then the second link, the Calendly, is actually a sign up to be interviewed by our logistics team, who is really trying to get some one-on-one interview insights on what you think of this programming. So, and it's only 15 minutes, very low commitment, one-time thing. So if you'd be up for being interviewed, I can't promise an AFS, but it'll still be a fun time. So just click the link. Yeah, thank you all so much. It's great to see everybody, see some return people. It always makes me happy. And Sam, so wonderful to have you, and nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the time and being able to share a little bit about, Iota and myself to you. And, go Tribe. Welcome to the team, guys.